tell me, who's spent more than a day or two in a hospital? Many of you. And who's had abdominal surgery? One I know. Several of you too. Mr. Chair, fellow Toastmasters, we don't have any guests. Medical mirth in the men's surgical ward. In mid-1974, which is winter in the Southern Hemisphere, I was in the men's surgical ward of the Salisbury Central Hospital in Rhodesia. That hospital was built soon after World War I and hadn't changed much by the time I got there. It was ruled by a bumptious dictator who had the title of matron. This was before the days of political correctness, human rights, or customer satisfaction. One word from her had her entire staff quaking in their boots, from novice nurses to senior surgeons, and her icy stare could induce a heart attack in the fittest of patients. Let me tell you why I was there. I'd been suffering from really bad stomach pains for about 3 months before this incident. I'd got married just at the end of the year before, and I thought it might be an allergy to marriage or to my first wife. I went to the doc. They put me through a whole battery of tests: barium meal, dye in the veins, x-rays, and then the ultimate indignity. They said, "You're going for a colonoscopy." Is that the right pronunciation? Oh dear. I went for the colonoscopy. Bearing in mind this is a very old hospital, and it's before the days of LED and lasers. They dressed me in one of those ridiculous gowns that opens down the back, put me on a gurney, wheeled me out onto this veranda, and left me there with my posterior exposed to the autumn breeze and the stares of passers-by. They wheeled me into day surgery. He brought out the instrument of torture. As I said, no LED lights. It looked like a bicycle pump with a built-in flashlight. He told me one of the 3 great lies. He said, "This is not going to hurt. It might be a bit uncomfortable." I knew the man was lying because the nurse whispered in my ear, "Grip my hand as tight as you need to. It's okay. You will be all right." I won't go into details except to say that this procedure was inconclusive. Then they threatened they were going to push the pipe down the other end, down my throat, and I was terrified. I thought it might be the same doctor and the same pipe. But fortunately, I got worse. That saved me. So they decided to take me into hospital and to open me up. They did a thing called a laparotomy, opened me up, and they found a weeping appendix, which has infected a gland in my groin. They sorted that out. The result was that I've got the longest appendectomy scar in medical history. It goes from my navel all the way to, well, we won't go into too much detail. So that's how I came to be in the men's surgical ward. Now, there were no private wards in that hospital. The men's surgical ward was a room much like this, perhaps a bit longer, and it had 15 beds on this side with little steel lockers in between, and 15 beds on that side with little lockers in between. It had a door there that led to a bathroom. It had a door there which was the entrance, and it had the huge veranda across the end there with windows opening on. And any patient who survived 5 days and could walk was allowed to go out onto the veranda, enjoy the fresh air and the breeze, watch the traffic, that sort of thing. That's why I was here. I regained consciousness in the early hours of the morning because a little female voice was saying, "Mr. Wright, time for your bath." Now the hospital beds were huge. They were those old white steel frame things, about this high. So I opened my eyes, I was on my side, and there's little eyes staring at me. That's a really short nurse. She was literally 2 bricks and a 2-knee tall. And she said, "Mr. Wright, time for your bath." I said, "Hey, I'm recovering from major surgery. There's no way I'm in bath. I can't even get out of bed." She was built from the same mould as the bumptious matron. She was equally bumptious. She said, "Mr. Wright, you have a choice. You get out and go to the bathroom, or I will give you a very public and very uncomfortable bed bath in front of the whole ward." I got out of bed. I staggered up the aisle, gripping my stomach to prevent a premature disemboweling, staggering like this. In that corner over there, was an old Scottish gentleman, also equally bumptious. He was in a pretty bad way, and he kept himself going by tormenting all the new patients. He started clapping and cheering every step I made. Boom, boom, boom. He got the rest of the ward, all 29 guys, to join in. And I'm trying desperately not to laugh. I really am in agony because they didn't have painkillers much. I'm staggering. I got the greatest respect from that experience for any woman who's ever had a hysterectomy. Believe me. The little nurse had also said that if I was not out, I was not to lock the door, and if I was not back from the bathroom in 10 minutes, she was going to finish the job and get me out. Believe me, I got back within the 10 minutes. I had to get back into bed. There were no steps. It was like climbing the north face of the Eiger, but I made it. Collapsed into bed. The next funny episode then was my wife at the time, who was a rather large lady with a very short fuse, came to visit me. And my neighbour on my left was an old gentleman living out his last lonely days in the hospital. He actually died when I was there. And he'd spilt a bottle of orange concentrate all over the floor next to my bed. The floor was made of wooden blocks. We called it parquet flooring. I don't know, do you know what I'm talking about, hardwood blocks? So this went over there. It hadn't been cleaned up. So my wife, Cheryl, quite large, comes, stands there. As she moves, the blocks stick to the soles of her feet, and she's pointing around. And I'm trying really hard not to laugh. A, because this is painful, and B, this would be painful if I did. My neighbour on that side was a young guy, about 18 years old. He was a regular soldier from the Rhodesian Light Infantry, and he'd taken 3 bullets through the chest from an RPD terrorist machine gun. Had punctured a lung, but hadn't done too much damage, but left horrific exit wounds on his back. He'd been sewn up, and his back looked like a railroad marshalling yard. He had this Y-shaped scar from his shoulders down to here, all sutured up. But with the resilience of youth, he was out of bed in a week, hardly ever there, except for meal times. We didn't have a TV in the ward. So there was one in the nurse's home, so he would go over there and chat the girls up, watch TV, and come back for meals. That was just another funny episode there. Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, that was a bit of mirth from the men's surgical ward back in the medical dark ages, Mr. Chair.